Back a couple of months ago, we had somebody comment on a video 52 times by themselves. You know what that person is called? An absolute real one. And on today's show, we're looking for another real one to join the Real One movement. If you beat that 52 number, we're going to give you a shout out this week right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. As for what we're getting into on today's show, Darius saying on his podcast on the Colin Cowherd Volume Podcast Network that he was this close to signing with the Baltimore Ravens. Jalen Carter, stud defensive tackle with Georgia, obviously with a lot of trails following him heading into the NFL draft for legal reasons. Did visit with the Birds. Could the Eagles draft him if he falls to Philadelphia at number 10? And are the Birds linked to safety Ryan Neal, who had a great year last year and played under Sean Desai, the new Eagles defensive coordinator? All that coming your way on a stacked Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr. Appreciate you for joining us. So let's begin with Darius said on his podcast he was so close to signing with the Baltimore Ravens, but for some of the reasons that we've talked about, decided to come back to the Philadelphia Eagles to continue his NFL career. Here's what he said verbatim. I was almost this close a Baltimore Raven. I was this close, but I wanted to be an Eagle. I stayed an Eagle because I know me and Howie Roseman were going to figure something out. But the Baltimore Ravens, they were the first team that called, and they offered just what I wanted. And I just said, if the Eagles do that, I'm going to stay as a Philadelphia Eagle. And for Philadelphia, obviously, it worked out. Pretty interesting, the timeline now that we know, because Howie Roseman had offered C.J. Gardner-Johnson a contract extension. He refused, thought that he was going to get more money elsewhere. So then the Eagles, who told Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, look, we can't wait around forever, then changed their focus to Darius Slay and James Bradberry and brought both of those cornerbacks back for a quarterback tandem that was one of the best in the NFL last year. Why I think keeping Slay is really, really important. Still a top-tier corner in this league. Look back at what he did against Justin Jefferson in prime time a year ago. It was special. Put the clamps on him. Now, I know a lot of people want to say that toward the tail end of the regular season, Slay fell off a little bit. But if you look at how this Eagles defense played against some top-tier quarterbacks and against some potent offenses in the NFL, not just in 2022, but the last 2 years under Jonathan Gannon, the entire defense struggled. So I think that's important to note. Darius Slay is also a team captain and a vocal team leader, locker room presence. You get some defensive continuity by bringing him back because you've lost 2 starting safeties, 2 starting backers, as well as Javon Hargrave. So to bring him back, that helps absorb the blow of losing some of those other players. And when you have, in a pass-happy league, 2 very good corners, and Darius Slay and James Bradberry, who make each other better, who take pressure off of one another, that's obviously ideal. And you think about what Howie Roseman said last week, which we did talk about. They build along the defensive line, then their next focus is to that cornerback position. Darius Slay, James Bradberry, backing up that team-building philosophy. Before we move on today's show, we picked up 90 new subscribers over the weekend. To those of you hopping on board, joining the show on the road to 50,000 subscribers, I appreciate you. Can we beat that 90 count on today's show alone? This is why you should subscribe if you haven't already done so. Daily shows on the latest Eagles news and rumors, analysis as well. We do live shows and watch parties where myself and Trizzy Trace, we're always down to have a grand time. Our NFL draft coverage has been awesome. Our free agency coverage, preeminent on YouTube. And we do shows every single day. Lock us in. Still to come on the show, Jalen Carter visiting the Eagles. He's not taking any visits outside of the top 10, according to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus. And are the Eagles showing some interest in safety Ryan Neal, who was surprisingly let go by the Seattle Seahawks coming off a career year last year? But first, today's show is sponsored by Fume. If you're trying to kick a bad habit, Fume is where it's at. You can get 10% off the Journey Pack by heading to tryfume.com/chatsports. What is Fume? Let's tell you more. We all have bad habits, and we certainly know how hard they are to sometimes kick. Our sponsor, Fume, on a mission to accelerate humanity's breakup from the bad habits that consume far too many of us. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. I didn't expect much out of Fume, nor did Trizzy, but we started getting it going, and the minty sensation, really powerful, hits the back of the throat when you do inhale. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors. We're talking white cranberry, maple pepper, as well as crisp mint, and you can get those flavors as part of the Journey Pack. Fume is not, and I repeat, not a vape. It's a non-electronic device designed to transform your negative habits, and the easiest way to stop a bad habit, switch to a positive one. Fume designed to perfectly do just that. Head to tryfume.com/chatsports. Use the code chatsports to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. Let's move forward on today's show. Do some draft talk here. Jalen Carter visiting the Philadelphia Eagles, according to his agent Drew Rosenhaus, visited with the Birds, and now the Chicago Bears on this fine Monday. Some background on this defensive tackle prospect who doesn't come into the NFL draft without some controversy, right? Was projected to potentially be the top defender taken before entering a no-contest plea. He was drag racing, and it resulted in a crash in which 2 people died. At his pro day, he was out of shape, winded, falling down, cramped up. He is a generational talent, though, if everything does check out, and Drew Rosenhaus is treating that as the consensus here. I'm confident he said that Jalen Carter will go in the top 10. He is a good person. He is a family man. He loves football and is a generational talent. Now, there's a big reason why Drew Rosenhaus is the most popular agent in the NFL. He's always going to have the back of his client. That comes as absolutely no surprise. And as we take a look at the numbers here, you can see why Drew Rosenhaus said that he's a generational talent. But of course, he's trying to increase the stock of his client, because what does it mean when Jalen Carter is a top 10 pick? He gets more money. And what does that mean for Drew Rosenhaus? He gets a cut of that type of salary. 32 tackles last year for Carter, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 3 pass breakups. In the college football playoff, this guy took over games. At points throughout the regular season, he took over games. He demands double teams. He can throw dudes right to the turf. He can bull rush you. He has the finesse to get around some of those slower and larger offensive linemen, has a little versatility with where he can line up across the line of scrimmage. This guy is a freak and can also tackle and get after the opposing quarterback with some really good speed pursuit. Here's my take on Jalen Carter. I understand that Jalen Carter would come to Philadelphia with some controversy and with this legality matter following him. But if everything checks out legally, and he's cleared of any wrongdoing, and he's available at number 10, I'd take him. Why is that? Jalen Carter has way too much potential to pass up on if the situation checks out. The Eagles have a culture to keep him in line. The Eagles have a couple of players in that locker room, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, Darius Slay, Jalen Hurts, where if Carter enters that locker room and he sees also a guy like Jason Kelce, he's not going to mess around. This is a championship-level culture where they can get him in a structured environment so that he understands the opportunity and the life-changing money that he can make for himself as well as his family. And then the on-field pairing of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis together at defensive tackle, that is a defensive tackle duo that can wreak havoc in the National Football League for the next 5 to 10 years. So if he's there, and a lot of people had pegged him to be the top defender in this draft class, and you get the value of him at number 10, if he is in fact in the clear of this legal situation in which 2 people passed away, I'm probably taking him at number 10. What would you do if you were in the shoes of Howie Roseman? Would you draft Jalen Carter? D for draft, R for risky, sound off, and if you want to interact with me and share any of your thoughts on that subject, anything with the birds, life, fitness, health, wellness, whatever, I'm all about it. At Chase_Senior on Twitter and Instagram. Let's round out with this. So a couple of sites and blog boys out there have linked Ryan Neal to the Philadelphia Eagles. Couple of reasons, right? I still think they could have a need at that safety spot, even though they signed Terrell Edmunds as well as Justin Evans. Those players are not Ryan Neal. Seattle, surprisingly the other day, withdrew the RFA tender on Neal, making him an unrestricted free agent. And another reason why he's getting tied to Philadelphia on top of them having a need at that safety spot, he played under Sean Desai last year when Desai was the associate head coach alongside Pete Carroll. And it's pretty surprising that Neal is available. Still a really young player who had a really good year last year. 14 games, 10 starts in 2022 for the surprise Seattle Seahawks. During that stretch, 8 pass breakups, 66 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble to go along with 1 interception as we take a look at the numbers here. And a large sample size where Ryan Neal also played special teams on top of having those 10 starts and playing in those 14 games. So if you're like, well, it doesn't make sense to bring him in. The Eagles already have their 2 starters, Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmunds. You have your backup in Justin Evans. You still have Kevon Wallace. Like, this guy can be a starter or a high-level backup. UDFA out of Southern Illinois a couple of years ago. Solid size at 6'2", 200 pounds, only 27 years old. And last year, despite only having 10 starts, did play 73% of the snaps defensively and also chipped in with 28% of the snaps played on special teams. And this is what's interesting here, right? You look at the analytics and the Pro Football Focus numbers, Neal graded out really, really well. 85.6 overall grade, a run defense grade of 79.5, and a coverage grade of 85.7. So this guy by no means is a stiff at all. And if you put him into the mix on this Eagles safety depth chart with Terrell Edmunds, Reed Blankenship, Kevon Wallace, and Justin Evans, you might not have the star and notable player in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but you get a pretty good player in there in Ryan Neal who just adds to the overall depth of your defense. And Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmunds, they like to play in the box because they're not scared to put a hat on you too. So it adds some versatility to your defense, and Sean Desai certainly knows how to use them as well. So let's show love for love here. You're still watching the show. We appreciate you. Let's do a real one roll call right here on this beautiful, fine Monday. And I appreciate all of you for hanging out with us on today's show, making Eagles Now a part of your day. A reminder, I'm going to be in Key West starting on Friday, but we're still going to be giving you content all throughout my trip. My sister also has an engagement party in D.C., so I'll be there after that. But the content's going to continue because we're the content daddies.